the fate.
This is the way. Truth is, I am Iron Man.
Tells me when you'll cement this.
Hello, critics, non-critics, and friends. Welcome to the Film Optics Podcast, where we take a glance into blockbusters, indie films, and everything in between. I'm your host, Christian, and as always, I'm joined by my partner in film, Devin, and today we're going to be giving our spoiler-free thoughts on Twisters, the not so much of a remake. It's not a remake, but it's not a sequel. I guess you could say it's a requel, but I think it's more of a sequel than it is a remake.
I just call it a reboot.
Reboot could work too.
Because there's no returning characters, unless you count Dorothy.
Right, yes. Dorothy does make a small little appearance. And also the first one that came out in 1996, that's called Twister, and this is called Twisters. So I wonder what the third film is going to be called.
The Twistening.
The Twistening. Twist squared, or twist to the power of 3.
Twisties.
Twisties. Twizzlers. Twisties. I like that. I like that a lot. But before we begin today's episode, you can listen to our podcast on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. And if you are a new or seasoned listener to the show, we would love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at FilmOptics. That is optics with an X, or you can email us at filmoptics@gmail.com for any movie-related questions. Devin, what's going on in your life? How's your week been? We're recording here on a Thursday, which is technically the same day as the previews for Twisters that is now hitting theaters. But what's been going on in your life lately?
Nothing too crazy. Just hanging out. I did watch the original Twisters last week in preparation for this. I had actually never seen it before.
Really?
Yeah.
Devin, it's like a rite of passage for like us.
I've been seeing a lot of talk about it on Twitter. Some mixed, but overall pretty positive.
Yeah.
As far as a movie, that cast is just so killer.
Yeah. What did you think of the first film?
I thought it was pretty entertaining.
Okay. Yeah. I wasn't sure what your history was. I guess I didn't know you as well as I thought I did all these years.
Yeah, it's a big deal. You're either a Twister or you're not.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. But yeah, I rewatched the first one a few weeks ago as I knew this was coming out, and you know, I like to rewatch the previous movies before seeing the new one. It's kind of like doing homework almost for these premieres or these screenings. But I'm also on my road through the Alien films, so
Yeah, I need to get on that at some point too.
yeah, they're all on Disney Plus for anyone out there wondering. Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm on Aliens, the second one. I'm about 20 minutes in. I had to stop short yesterday because I forgot I had prior obligations with a few other friends, but I am loving it so far.
That popcorn bucket looking really good.
I know. I really like how, like, it used to just be like AMC getting into like the popcorn bucket market, and it made it a little bit more special because that was the only place you can go to get these types of popcorn, like themed buckets. But now Cinemark and Regal is also doing their own, so I think that's pretty cool. But I think the cream of the crop is still the Dune Part 2 popcorn bucket.
Yes, if there's one thing Dune brought to us as a society, it is the evolution of popcorn buckets.
I want to know, I want to be in these meetings where they're like, hey, we need a popcorn bucket for this big blockbuster coming out.
Because the new Alien one, it's not even practical. Like it looks more like a movie prop than a popcorn bucket. It's not very useful.
Yeah, which is actually makes it really cool. Like it kind of serves both purposes.
Like the Mjolnir one I have.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you do have it serves another purpose. And honestly, for that Alien one, because it's like the alien head, like you can like prop that up on your wall or whatever just for like decoration. So I think that's pretty awesome. But I have not bought a popcorn bucket in a while. I do miss the tin popcorn buckets though, I'm not gonna lie. I do miss those, but I guess we've evolved past that altogether. But as we have mentioned, we are going to be giving our spoiler-free thoughts on Twisters. Again, it's coming out this weekend, the weekend of July 19th, 2024. And without further delay, we will be right back after this introduction to Twisters.
What do you see?
It already has a nice structure. Moisture levels are just right and lots of cape.
What else are you seeing?
Flow is clean, pulling tons of warm, moist air from the south.
And when that warm air and moisture busts through the cap, it explodes in the atmosphere, creating an anvil. The vertical wind shear begins to rotate the updraft, forming a mesocyclone.
And here's the mystery.
We don't know how a tornado forms. We see the hook on the radar, but
What are all the invisible factors coming together? Every little detail that
has to be perfect. And it's a mix of what we know and everything we can't understand. It's part science, part religion. Come on, baby. Come on. Come on, please. Come on. Please. Come on.
There it is. Yeah, baby!
There we go. You see that? That's a tornado right there, baby. Get some photos of that, man. The birth of a tornado, nature's masterpiece.
And we are back with our spoiler-free review of Twisters. This film is directed by Lee Isaac Chung, and writers include Mark L. Smith, Michael Chetrin, and Joseph Konsinski. And the synopsis is as follows. A retired tornado chaser and a meteorologist is persuaded to return to Oklahoma to work with a new team and new technologies. Ooh, very ominous, almost in a way. It's a very basic synopsis, but this film, of course, stars Daisy Edgar-Jones, Glen Powell, and Anthony Ramos, just to name a few. And we got our buddy David Cornslet is also in this movie.
Yeah, nice surprise appearance. I didn't know until a couple days before seeing it that he was actually in it.
I didn't know until when I went to go see the movie.
Yeah, he just kind of pops up. You're like, oh, there's Superman.
Yeah, I was like, is that David Cornslet? Apparently, he actually was filming Twisters when he got the news that he was going to be starring as Superman in James Gunn's new film. So I think that's actually pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. And of course, Kiernan Shipka also makes a appearance as well. I totally thought that was McKenna Grace for the longest time. It is not McKenna Grace. It is Kiernan Shipka. That was my fault for thinking that it was McKenna Grace. I do apologize. But hey, during all that was happening, it was really hard to see who it was. And I was like, it looks like her, but not quite. So I don't know. It gets kind of crazy. But what we're going to do here, we're going to try out something new. We're going to give our scores first, and we're going to explain why we gave it that score for this movie. Again, this is a spoiler-free review, so we're not going to be giving away any major plot points. Devin and I have both done our homework. We have seen the first Twister movie. Apparently, this was Devin's first time ever seeing it, which it's still blowing my mind just a little bit. But
apparently, we had been on the Twister ride at Universal when we went like 15 years ago. I don't remember that either.
Really? Oh, wow. I mean, I will say, and I think this is pretty cool to bring up. I'm not sure if you know this, Devin, but Twister, the original Twister movie that came out in 1996, that was the first movie to ever hit the DVD format.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I was like, man, that's such a great movie to hey, we got this new DVD format. We're getting rid of VHSs. Here's Twister. And it's like, oh, now that is a movie. But Devin, I'm going to pass it over to you. What are your thoughts on this film, and what would you rate Twisters?
Yeah, going into this one, like I said, I watched Twister the week before, and I definitely enjoyed that. I think the cast is really what carried that movie throughout, because obviously They did the best they could with the visuals as far as Twisters in the 90s, and I think they did a pretty good job of that. And then obviously just that cast and the chemistry they had together, and just the setting and the different set pieces, it all came together pretty well. So I think some people were apprehensive, like they always are when there's a reboot / remake / requel. People are just kind of scared of their precious properties, and they don't want them to be tarnished in any way. But I think Twisters did a good job of modernizing it without taking away from what made the original so loved, and that was just kind of focusing on the actual Twisters and not making a joke out of it, not taking away from that, and focusing on a core cast that has great chemistry, and then the Twisters. And I think the visual upgrade to the new Twisters is definitely very welcomed. I think they all look pretty cool with the technology we have nowadays. Definitely better than Sharknado back in the day.
Oh boy, I remember that one all too well.
Yeah, I was always a big Sharknado fan, just kind of hilariously dumb and entertaining. But this is definitely a step up from that, thankfully. I think the cast is great. Obviously, Daisy Edgar-Jones is the main lead here. She kind of is the one driving the ship here as far as the story goes. But then you get Glen Powell that comes in and just gets a shot of charisma, I'd say, about a quarter of the way through the movie, and you definitely feel that. His rise to fame has just been kind of crazy to watch, because he had been in so many things, but nobody was really recognizing him until Top Gun Maverick really launched him into stardom. It's just crazy to think about how he's just like at the top right now. It feels like he feels like he's getting a different role booked every day, and he's just finding interesting new movies to be in. And I don't think my sister would have agreed to see this with me if he wasn't in it. That's just kind of the pull he has right now. So I was like, hey, you want to go see Twisters? And she's like, Glen Powell's in it? I'll be there. That's kind of like the stardom he has right now. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's like with us and, certain actresses as well. It's like, we'll see anything with Florence Pugh in it or Zendaya. So it's like there are those stars that they have that charisma, they have that juice where it's like no matter what it is, people will go see it. Like, heck, people went for Harry Styles for
Don't Worry, Darling, or Eternals. Either one works.
Yeah, I was gonna say Don't Look Up. I'm like, that's not the right movie. Yeah, for Don't Worry, Darling, like Harry Styles. I'd never seen so many people, and like no one knew who Olivia Wilde was, like who was going to go see that movie. People knew Florence Pugh, and most importantly, they knew who Harry Styles.
No one knew a single Eternal going to that movie. They just knew that Harry Styles was in it, and he was in it for 30 seconds, and they waited the whole time just for that.
Yep, which is crazy. It's crazy stuff. But what would you rate Twisters?
As far as a rating, I'd probably give it like a solid 76. Like, there's definitely some issues I had with it, but I think overall it is a really good time, especially at the movies. I'm curious as to how this one's gonna fare in the box office, but I think it definitely could. If it gets the right word of mouth, it could have some success. But I think my theater specifically definitely had a lot of cheering and clapping, especially at the end, which is always a good sign.
For my experience, I saw this early screening as well. Devin and I both saw it on the same night, just in two separate locations. I got to say, it was a fan screening, so they invite fans, and then then they invite critics as well. More of like an afterthought, but like we had like our own designated seating. It was actually kind of cool because right before the movie, I didn't think a lot of people are going to go see this. I'm like, I don't even know if anyone cares about Twister or anything like that. Like, I'm literally looking on the back of the Blu-ray box right now, and the original is rated PG-13. I'm assuming this one is as well, but it's rated PG-13, and I quote Devin, it says on the back of the box, for intense depiction of very bad weather.
Yeah, I think Chris Stuckman mentioned that in his review. Like, just one of those funny ratings that it's just so random.
Yeah, he did. Okay, Chris Stuckman, he's on the up and up as well, but we'll talk about him. That's a conversation for another day. But I would give this movie an 80 out of 100 on the Film Optics scale of review. When it comes to this movie, I didn't know what to expect, like you said. But it delivered like every thrill. Like, I wanted it to feel the exact same way as the original Twister. And although I think I mean, if we're comparing the two, I think I do prefer the original just a little bit more, but this is such a great movie. It has a lot of thrills. My audience was eating it up like no tomorrow. Our entire theater was basically packed. And right before the movie, there were actually a few meteorologists from a few Nashville local news stations who came in, and they actually got to interview Daisy Edgar-Jones and Glen Powell, but they came in to watch the movie with us, and they like held this little seminar beforehand in the movie theater, like answering people's questions about tornadoes, because
Cool.
yeah, it's really cool because Nashville is kind of notorious for them as well. But
Is it in Tornado Alley or is it like close to it?
so from what I remember, I think we are, but like the scale of our tornadoes were a little bit less than those. I think we kind of were like in the splash zone. From what I remember, don't quote me on that. But everyone like had their hands out. They're asking about all these questions, and someone asked a weird question. They're like, "Oh, can I go to my attic during a tornado?" I was like, "Oh, come on, buddy.
Don't do that.
You're gonna get swept up so
No
fast."
attic, and if you learn anything from this movie, no cars. That's
No
a
cars.
big takeaway from this one.
Exact. No cars at all.
Unless your car has like spikes in it that can drill into the ground.
That was so cool. But and no free passageways, like when you're going through like a freeway and it has like the overhead passage of like a bridge. You don't want to
It looks safe, but apparently not.
It's like a wind tunnel, man. You'll get sucked right up. But I will say, when I think what this movie does great, and I think Chris Suckman actually mentioned this in his review, is like they didn't change the formula, because you have these massive twisters. These people felt like they were in danger 24/7.
Yeah, I was gonna say the thing that I think improved the most from the original was I felt like there were more stakes in this one. Like, it felt like there's just more danger for the characters than in the first one.
And I think the third act of this film was in a movie theater, and I believe in the original it was a drive-in theater. I believe so. So it has those similarities, but outside of the Dorothy machine, there's no.
Yeah, I kept waiting for someone to pop up, like one of the characters from the original, but it didn't get to anyone. Even Fall Guy had that random cameo that no one ever would have recognized under the age of like 40. But yeah, I'm surprised no Helen Hunt, no Carrie Elwes, it doesn't help that a couple of them have passed on, unfortunately. But
Right. But yeah, I mean, it's such a great ride. I think it is. It plays just like a movie monster almost. Like it's almost like the tornadoes themselves, or like Godzilla, or like some type of kaiju, like King Kong. But like, even when it comes to this film, like you try to figure out. Okay, you have Daisy Edgar-Jones' character who has been through hell and back. Let's just say that, and she has reasons for moving on with her life, and she used to chase these tornadoes, and it's just not something she really wants to do anymore. But then when it comes to Anthony Ramos' character, I felt like he was cool. Like he was there. Like he felt like the guy who had a crush on Daisy's character the entire time.
it seems like he's getting like third wheel in the press interviews as well.
Oh yeah, 1,000%.
Like he's just kind of sitting there like, oh, okay, I guess they're gonna have all the chemistry. I'll just sit here.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean, I love Anthony Ramos. He is an integral part of this story. But it's like when Glen Powell comes in, he's a part of this. He's a tornado wrangler. I have a tornado wrangler hat that they gave me.
I know you're aware of that one. And I know you love this soundtrack. I was going to mention that as well.
Oh, yeah. It's a great soundtrack.
I feel like there's not many movies that have like a full country soundtrack. Because this was like,
I agree,
from start to finish.
And that was like good country. That wasn't like pop country or anything like that. There's time and a place for that. This was like deep country like tracks, and it fits so well with the Oklahoma atmosphere. And as soon as when Glen Powell and his crew come in and just sweep everything away. Like, you know, there's a few modern angles here where it's almost the same as the first movie, where there are two teams. You know, they're trying to be like the first to, I think within the first movie, they were trying to get, figure out what happens inside of a tornado. And this one, they're trying to like scan the tornado, or at least on one side, and it turns into something completely different. But there's like these two teams where it's like, you start off with this movie with like the more well-equipped team.
It's kind of a switch up where you don't really know which team's the good team, technically.
Exactly. And I'm still kind of scratching my head for Anthony Ramos's character and that development with the company that he started, because I don't know, like he's there, but it's like he does get sidelined in the movie, and like it sucks, but it's like once Daisy and Glen just start, you know, once Glen's character comes into the picture, it's kind of like you kind of forget about Anthony Ramos's character collectively.
Yeah, Daisy's character was not too tired to hang out with Glen's character. I'll say that much.
Yeah, yeah. So it's, you know, there's a bit of romance here and there, but overall, I thought that, you know, we saw the beasts of the nature, and they explain, there's a lot of like meteorologist talk within this film, and they kind of explain there's a lot of ingredients of what happens when a tornado forms, but no one really knows what makes a tornado twist in the way that it does. It's like this wall of like wind and debris that's like, I don't know. I felt like a lot of these characters are going to lose their lives, and there's definitely casualties in this film. And it's like, I would be less bummed, or even more bummed, I should say, if like nobody like, you know, kicked the bucket. It's like, okay, like, are we just impervious to it? Because
I was trying to remember. I was trying to think back. No one really died in the original one.
No, not really. Because I think in the first opening act of the first Twister, there's like a big loss, but it really just sets the mood. But I do agree. Yeah, it's more of the side characters, or like the side characters that get hit. So it's not like the core group of people in the first film, but I feel like with this movie, there's way more casualties. Yeah. And it's so crazy how they were able to make this. They didn't change up the formula, and I think that's fine, where it is reminiscent of the original. And that's all we really needed. You know, it's a great summer blockbuster. You know, if you've seen the first one, I definitely think you should see this one. It's an entirely different story, and it's just more of a summer blockbuster, like one of the rare few that we're getting. And I think this was the collaboration between Universal and Warner Brothers all together.
Yeah, I was surprised when I saw both those logos.
Yeah, because Warner Brothers had sent me the original Twister in 4K, and I actually wanted to check it out beforehand, but I wasn't able to. But it's like, yeah, this movie just pretty much has it all. Like, it's a catchy phrase where it's like, if you feel it, chase it. And, you know, you got to ride out your fears. There's a lot to be had here. And I wouldn't mind seeing another one, but, you know, it's just a different cast of people. It doesn't necessarily have to be these same characters. But I want to give my flowers to Harry Haddon Payton in this movie. He was the British guy.
Yeah, he had a couple good lines in there.
If this movie was very funny as well. I think people are going to just have a laugh. It's not a complex story whatsoever. People are just going to enjoy it for what it is. You're going to ride out the storm. You're going to feel like you're in Oklahoma, in these tornado vortexes with everyone else, because my gosh, dude, like there were times where I was like, this is a lot. And it might be triggering for some people because, you know, unfortunately tornadoes or twisters, it's the same thing. They just call them twisters. They unfortunately take a lot of lives, and, you know, it's a lot of collateral damage, but my gosh, man, this I would go see this movie again. Like the original movie is like so good. Like I can watch that movie anytime, anywhere. And I hope that this film also has that staying power. But I'll pass it back over to you. Did you have anything else you wanted to mention in our review here before we get to our final thoughts? Or if you want to give your final thoughts now.
Yeah, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Brandon Perea as well. It's kind of like he's being casted in only scary things in the sky movies because he was also in Nope. So it's kind of cool that he's kind of the scary guy in the sky, scary thing in the sky guy.
Sky guy.
Because I remember he got his big break on Nope. I remember seeing the videos of Jordan Peele saying that he got the part and he was freaking out. It was cool to see him again. I think he brought a lot of good energy to this one. One issue I had, I didn't really like David Cornsweet's character. I didn't think they really gave him much to work with as far as a character. Felt like very vanilla, and it just didn't come off great for me as far as his character on screen. And then another small complaint I have is there's just a lot of like conveniences, like people just showing up out of nowhere, like at the exact spot. Like obviously that happens a lot in movies, but it felt very, very out of place in this one, just showing up out of nowhere at the exact right time.
Yeah. And I will actually say it's a bit of trivia here that I actually just found. Honoring the original Twister, the 1996 film. It was entirely shot on Kodak 35 millimeter film on location in Oklahoma. Lee Isaac Chung, the director, said that a large part of the decision came from wanting to capture the natural, vibrant colors of the state of Oklahoma. So I think that's pretty cool how they were able to really just pay homage to this classic. And Bill Paxton's son, James, actually also appears in the film. I'm not sure what character he is, but like you said, Devin, no character from the original Twisters does return in this movie. But it looks like April Warren has two separate uncredited parts in the two movies. And she was like the flashback mom in Twister, like in the very original, during the very opening scene, she was like the mom, in the cellar altogether. But I do agree. When it comes to like my final thoughts, I will say, yeah, David Cornsweet didn't have too much to do. It was still nice to see him all together. Even though, this movie isn't really about him. It's literally like Daisy Edgar-Jones and Glen Powell. Obviously, everyone else, cast and crew, who made this possible. But, there are going to be some characters that get kicked by the wayside. But I enjoyed Glen Powell's, like, the Tornado Wranglers, their entire crew all together when it came to the YouTube stuff that they were doing. That was a nice little twist that they added in there, no pun intended. But also Harry Haddon Patton's character, the British guy, he was great. Like every single comedic beat, it just flowed well together. It was written very well. But overall, like, outside of like Anthony Ramos' character kind of getting sidelined, to be fair, like his character wasn't really all that interesting, like to begin with. Not saying it was bad. It's just there were more interesting characters to kind of follow. He's there for a specific reason, but it's more of just, I don't know if you want to call him a MacGuffin or just like for a plot point, he kind of just sticks around. But they could have gone a little bit deeper with his character, I will say, for sure. But he's there. But unfortunately, sometimes that kind of just happens when it comes to films like this. But overall, I think this is a great summer blockbuster. People should go see it. And just ride your fears. Like it's just so, it's such a return to form.
Yeah, imagine it should be a big hit in like the Nashville area. Got that country sound and that down south look.
It really did. Man, they hit with that soundtrack. I was like, what is this? Like, this is really good. Like, it's not like they just threw together, oh, let's just get some country, music in there. It's like, yeah, but like you can show that they really they took their time, and it's like there's certain country that works with, you know, certain pieces of media, and it's like they really just they hit it home so well. And also the song in the second trailer, Ain't No Love in Oklahoma, it's sung by Luke Combs. Everybody loves Luke Combs.
Yeah, I was actually just looking through the soundtrack list. We got Benson Boone. I know he's new on the music scene. Got Luke Combs, Chris Stapleton. Got
Miranda Lambert,
Tyler
King
Childers.
Brown. Yeah, Jelly Roll, Nashville's own Jelly Roll, which I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
So it looks like Eddie Van Halen had incorporation with the original Twister as well. The only artist to be shown both in Twister and Twister's soundtrack is Shania Twain. So she's in both Twister soundtracks.
There you go.
I gotta listen to the soundtrack. I gotta listen to it. But Devin, was there any last words you want to say before we close out for today?
One last piece of trivia I just found for the original Twister was that the sound of the tornado was created by taking a recording of a camel's moan and slowing it down. That's very interesting.
A camel's moan. Wow.
Yeah. The magic of movies.
Yeah, I love the sound effects and how they get certain sound effects to sound a certain way. And it's like, I absolutely love that. But yeah, man, that is just so cool. I love the Twister franchise.
I'm honestly surprised there were no sequels, because I remember it being pretty popular, like pretty talked about whenever like it was out, and then obviously a few years after, I had a Universal ride and everything.
Well, actually, now that you mention it, through trivia here on IMDb, Bill Paxton had tried to get a sequel to the original Twisters after seeing its success as the director of films like Frailty from 2001. Paxton wanted to direct a modernized telling of the 1925 tri-state tornado that took the lives of 751 people. And it looks like Paxton was trying to get James Cameron to produce the film, and it was supposed to have a R rating, but it looks like they were also planning for it to be shot in 3D. Of course, it's with James Cameron. Why would it not be? And at one point, they had an unofficial schedule for the summer of 2012 under the title Twister 3D, but it was ultimately canceled due to budgetary concerns. And years later, Paxton passed away in 2017. So looks like he tried to get a sequel as quickly as he could, but it looks like all the pieces were not able to fall into place.
Yeah, because the original had a budget of around 100 million and then grossed around 500 million, so that was pretty good. This new one has a budget of around 200 million, so it doubled up. Wow.
I mean, it shows, honestly. The CGI on point, and that was my biggest concern with this. So it's like, how are the tornadoes going to look?
Yeah, I've seen some people, I think it was IGN, they mentioned that the old one looked better. I was just like, I don't know what you're looking at. It just doesn't.
Like the Twisters themselves?
Yeah, like the effects and everything.
I don't know. I would have to go back because with movies that come out like in the 90s, there's like a certain event, or 70s and 80s and 90s. There's like the film grain. The production's different, but I don't know. I would have to watch the first one again and then watch this one again, which is totally fine with me. But let's close out here because we'll be here all day if we don't. With all that said, that does conclude today's episode. Devin gave Twisters a 74 out of 100, and I gave it an 80 out of 100. So the official podcast score is going to be a 77.5 out of 100 for Twisters. Definitely go see it. See it in IMAX if you can, because I can only imagine that's going to be fantastic. And with all that said, that does conclude today's episode. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your preferred podcast platform of choice. And make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Film Optics. That is Optics with an X. And don't forget to share an episode of our podcast with a fellow movie lover in need, whether it be your mother, your brother, or your significant other. Spread the love for the Film Optics podcast. And now let's take a sneak peek at what you can listen to now on the show and what's coming up next on the show. So as of right now, you can listen to my 4K Blu-ray review roundup of the original Twisters, Challengers, Abigail, and Godzilla X Kong. I go through all 4 of those movies and their Blu-ray packages and let you know whether or not you should add those to your Blu-ray collection. You can also check out our The Bear Season 3 review, as well as our Maxine review and our Kinds of Kindness review that are out there for people to listen to. And for things coming up next, I think we have the Deadpool and Wolverines coming up next.
Finally here.
Finally here, man. Finally here. So that is the big movie that we're going to be covering. We might be doing a spoiler-free review, or not a spoiler-free, excuse me. We might be doing a spoiler cast or spoiler review of Batman Caped Crusader. Mike and I actually recorded a spoiler-free review for you guys. We're going to be dropping that on the day of embargo, and I think Devin's going to be joining us for the spoiler review. I think Mike's also going to be returning, so we can really get into the weeds of that episode. So Devin, start watching. It's amazing. And of course, we're going to be covering things such as Alien Romulus. There's a lot going on. But with all that said, thank you all for listening. If you enjoy this show, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That does help us with placement, and stay connected with us by following us on Twitter for the latest updates. That was Devin, and I'm Christian, signing off. And remember, if you feel it, chase it.
Yeehaw.
Yeah.